Let's take a really quick look at building simple visuals using Excel. So I've got an Excel spreadsheet here with some data. I've got an income statement over several periods, and I've got some ratios, right? Margins, turnover, that sort of thing. So bar charts and line charts are the best place to start. They're really easy to create. You can create one real quick, look at it, delete it if it doesn't help, modify it, etc. So I'm going to work with bar charts as a starting point. So let's say I want to look at my revenue over a period of time. I can highlight all this revenue data right here, right? So I can come over, select all that data. I'm going to hit Control Shift and right. It'll select all of those cells in that row. I'm going to come to the Insert tab, and here's bar charts right here. So you can toggle down and select different types of bar chart, but I'm just going to stick with a plain vanilla 2D bar chart. So this is what Excel gives me. In and of itself, not all that helpful, right? I can see a trend line. I can see revenue is improving. By the way, this is all rolling 12-month data. I've got another video on how to use that and what that is in another post, but I can see this company has growing revenue. This isn't that helpful of a visualization though. So one thing I might do is I might right click in this chart, come down to Format Chart Area. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to highlight the axis, right? I want the actual intervals of financial information that this is showing me, right? So I want to get rid of everything below this 8,000 mark because really my info starts up here and I want to see this trend more starkly. So I'm going to right click and format axis. And now this is giving me the chance to change my units and my boundaries. So minimum, instead of 0, right, starting down here, I want to start maybe in this 8,000 mark, right? Let's see what that looks like, what that does to this picture. Okay, now I can start to see a better trend line forming, right? So my revenue for this company was right around 9,500 for several periods before jumping up into this 11,000 plus territory, right? So did something happen? Did they buy another company? Did they expand into new territory, right? It gives me all sorts of questions that I can ask, hey, what happened? And then it really leveled out from there, right? Now we can see in the last couple of months, it's actually flat, maybe declining a little bit. So this is a much better picture. And by the way, if you want to add the dates on here, you can format your chart. Oops, select data, right? And then over here, when you have your whatever your data source is, you can come and add your dates. And now I've got all my dates running alongside of it. So this is a quick revenue chart, right? It's only telling me one piece of the picture. I'm only seeing my revenue. Let's say I want to look at something else, right? Maybe I want to see how my operating income has been performing over this period, right? How's my profitability look? Okay, this is telling me a much more interesting picture, right? So I saw that revenue trend line and we saw revenue spiking up. Well, when the company's revenue was flat, I can see that my operating income was generally pretty stable between 600 and 800, actually got as high as 1,000 and has been on a straight downward trend since then. And actually getting pretty close to the 0 mark here recently. So this is a trend line that would be very, very helpful, right? And even a couple of periods in here, right? This, maybe these 5 months here, this would be enough of a pattern to say, okay, what's going on, right? Should we be doing something? Ideally, you would have caught this trend well before you got to this period, right? Even from here to here and here to here, you can see that there's enough of a trend and pattern there to step in and say, what do we need to dig into? So from there, what are some things that we would look at to see, okay, why is this happening, right? One place might be to go to interest expense. Is your company taking on too much debt and interest expense is growing? This is inverse, right? Because it's showing me a negative number, but I can see that interest expense is getting larger, although not so much that this would drive the company's profitability to 0. So that's an interest expense line. Let's go over to this ratios area. One thing that people overlook is expense creep and how their overhead expenses as a percentage of revenue are changing over time. So we'll call this SG&A margin, selling, general, and administrative margin percentage. So this is showing me my expenses for overhead, right, SG&A, as a percentage of revenue. So this 3466 divided by 9568, that would give me my SG&A margin of 36.2%. So let's try highlighting all that data and insert another bar chart. Okay, this is pretty helpful, right? So I can see that my overhead expenses as a percentage of revenue have grown substantially over the last, I don't know, 10, 11 months, right? This is very much a trend that's likely leading to my lower operating income. So one thing I could do is I could plot some kind of an average or a median going back in time. Maybe that would show me something right around this 36% mark to say, okay, that's where I should be. And I'm at 39%. Maybe there's 2 or 3 percentage points that I should be improving my overhead expenses. How about gross margins, right? Are gross margins leading to my operating income issues? Partially, yes, right? Partially. So sometimes you'll find a business where gross margins are stable and overhead expenses as a percentage of revenue are increasing, and maybe your issue is isolated there. This company looks like it's having problems in both areas, right? Gross margins are coming down and their overhead is climbing, right? Kind of a double whammy effect that it's creating. So this is a great way to visualize that, right? We can see this trend very easily, very obviously, where if you're just looking at the percentage, right? So here's the last couple months of percentage: 43, 43, 41, 40, 39.8, and 39.6. That doesn't seem like a big difference, right? It doesn't look like it's a significant impact, right? It's just 3.5%, 4%. But when you visualize it to see, we were here and now we're here, and you spread that across big dollars, the impact becomes pretty substantial. So let's say that I wanted to plot that against maybe a median or an average, right? One thing I could do is I could type in equals average. I could select that whole data set, and I could just copy this over, right? I want to copy the value, so I'm going to paste the values because I want the same number. I don't want the average to change. So now I can select those two data sets, right? I've got those two rows. I'll insert my bar chart. And what I want to do here is change chart type. So you right click. And I'm going to do a combo. Combo means I can have both a line chart and a bar chart at the same time. I can put them on different axes if I want to. So I want my first series to be a line because I want it to just be flat straight across, right? That's showing me my average. And then I want my actual data to be a bar. Okay. And then from here I could change the boundaries to give me a more condensed view of it. So let's do that too. Okay, format axis. Instead of starting at 0.36, maybe I'll start it at 0.38. Okay, so here's my average, right? My average is way up here, close to 44%, and I can see, okay, well, right here is where I got close to my average, right here is where I went below it, and now I'm substantially below it, right? So if you were looking at this, you would hopefully catch it right here, this little gap. You'd see that and say, okay, hey, we're operating at gross margins below average. What do we need to do to get back or above that 43%, 44%, right? So this is a way that you can use visuals that your mind may not otherwise see if you're just looking at the plain number. So this is charting. I know that this is basic concepts, but use these tools to help visualize some of the trends in your financial information. And check out our newsletter, profitmastery.io, and we'll cover concepts and tools like this every single week.